Communication. Okay, so this lesson is about writing skills. So we'll be looking at writing a little bit on emails. Of course, you know, the writing tickets a little bit. I don't know if we address those specifically. A lot about the knowledge base, which is kind of related to tickets. So that's where we're going to look. Now, I'm showing it like this rather than show the full screen because I wanted to point out to you, you should download the PowerPoint and then you should follow these links. So for example, if you follow that link, it'll take you to a very helpful website, which has a lot of stuff on the knowledge base. Also, I should mention that this particular lesson is tied in with the lab that I gave you yesterday. And at the end of this lesson, there's a bunch of resources. There's another link with a bunch of resources that, so let's go and look. If you look at that one, follow that link, and it's got a bunch of resources on to help you with some technical writing. Yeah, so there's some videos to watch. And yeah, so all those things, I'm not going to go through those with you. I'm just telling you to sort of have a look at the slides. Now, this is what I mean when I go through here quickly. You're going to see, oh, where is it? When we talk about the knowledge base, there's a lot of notes there that you should refer to as well. That will help you sort of with that. It's kind of detailed. Sorry about that. So I won't go through all of that now, but you can see there's a few of those. All right. So just alerting you to that you should do that on your own afterwards. Have a look at those. Sound good? Let's go. So with that said, we can go to full screen and let's just sort of have a look at written skills. Service desk and emails. We're going to talk about that. The social media used by some service desks as a way of contacting, actually doing customer service through social media. Knowledge management, we've got a little bit about that, and then writing skills, improving them. If you can write good communications to your customers, that's a skill that's useful. That's all we're saying here. And here's some of the things that you would be writing. Now, when I say good communications, I don't mean writing novels, writing essays. I mean, we're not trying to sort of be persuasive so much here in that way, or to evoke any kind of a feeling. What we're trying to do is we're trying to communicate information that they want anyways. And so they're going to accept it in small bits, which are not necessarily grammatical. I mean, they don't have to be full sentences, something like this, a bunch of dot points. That's actually a good way of doing a lot of the writing that we'll be talking about in today's lesson. So that is mentioned in this slide, I think, the fact that it refers to simplified content. That's what we really want to do. That's the skill that we're looking at, is we're taking a technical issue and we're presenting it in a simplified and easy as understand and easy to follow way as possible. When you look at the videos, and I do hope you look at those videos, there's a lady there that talks about how to do good technical writing, and she talks about two different types. One type where we're doing step by step, and they must be in the same order, and another type where things are sort of free form. There's lots of different options like that to consider, but in every case, it's about how do we get this simple, somebody can look at it and understand it. Again, do you notice the dot points? This is what we should be doing in our technical writing. So we are going to focus a little bit on this. The know the audience thing, I think I've got a couple of slides on that. Let's look and have a fun. Let's see what we have. But first, we've got this concept of a style guide. So your service desk should have a style guide. Every organization that does a lot of technical writing will probably have some kind of a style guide. Universities have style guides, but that's for students to use and faculty to use in their not as easy to read publications, right? Like a dissertation or a journal article, you're going to have a particular style for that. And you can find those in your Microsoft Word, and I mentioned that to you. So finding your how to do your citations, etc. But the style guide for the service desk is basically going to say, well, what mode do we use? Do we use second person narrative, or do we use a third person? How do we define our terms? Maybe it'll even have a glossary that of known terms that we add to certain documents, how the documents are going to be secured. So the style guide is just going to be like a regulation within the organization of how we write our documents. And you should probably look and find that. This is a point about consistency. So for example, you should have standard ways of referring to certain things. So in this case, we're making the error of referring to the same thing two different ways. That's supposed to be the word credential. Oops. But it's not a very good way of using it anyways. We would go for this, right? Username and password, not your company credential. About knowing your audience, that means understanding their level of technical understanding and making sure that we're not using words and concepts that they don't really understand. I guess I could say a bit more about that. The understanding the audience. What is the business that you're in, right? So you might be in the IT service desk, but maybe you're in an accounting firm, or maybe you're in a media production firm, or you see what I'm saying? Maybe you're in some kind of engineering term. So in which case, in any of all three of those, you've got a different kind of audience that's going to be reading your technical documents, and they'll have different understanding. Yeah, don't use, I guess if I was to summarize this slide, I'd just say don't use arcane as a word. Okay, so that's a big word too. Don't use language which is very narrowly understood by a very narrow group of people. The language you should use should be accessible, that people can read it and understand it. So it's now it's saying here as a general idea, don't use acronyms. Here's some acronyms. I think the idea there is that we, if we're going to use an acronym, we'll define it first, and then once we've defined it, then we can use it usually. The point here I've already made a couple of times is it's better if the document, we don't want rambling paragraphs. What we want is we want short things, dot points. Awesome. I mean, and it actually forces you as a technical writer to have a little bit of discipline, because each of those dot points has to mean something in a very few words, and not be too repetitive. And so it's a good sort of skill to do, to get into writing dot points, maybe numbered points. Now, obviously, the inference is if you're doing not numbered points, that might be steps in order, because you're putting an order to it. So, you know, if they're not in order, maybe you just want to do dot points. But if they are in order, putting the numbers there is a nice idea, because everybody knows that 2 comes after 1. And so we're going to do 1 first. And okay, so email. Email, what am I going to say about email? It is a serious business. We do need to keep our emails professional. It's not the same as writing your emails to your friends. And there's a couple of little hints that we've got here that'll help us to keep our email respectful, professional, and useful. So the same things that we've talked about in the previous slides are true. We do want to make it short. We do use dot points and things like that. We want to, I mean, as a rule of thumb, I wouldn't like to send out an email to somebody that's sort of more than 1 page long. You know, I mean, more than one A4 page. If you're getting to something that's long, you probably need to save it as a Word document and attach it as an attachment, because the email itself should be something short and something that people can see what it is they have to do and then know what to do it. So don't make sort of long rambling emails. But how do we use it? Emails, you will use emails as alerts to say, okay, we've opened this ticket, we've closed this ticket, we're sending this ticket to other people. And if you note here, I'm not going to go through those notes, but you can, you should look at that, as I mentioned at the start of this lesson. Don't use email for, don't let your email become spam. In other words, emails that are going to people that don't need to see them or don't want to see them. You need to sort of avoid. Now, how do we do that? We make sure that where is that? Yeah. Oh, we'll get to it. To make sure that it's not spam, we make sure that we are very careful on the to list, who are we sending this email to, and the CC list, courtesy copy or carbon copy or whatever you want to call it, and the BCC list, the blind. Don't just add people to those lists just on a whim. You know what I'm saying? Be very careful. Don't send emails to people that don't need to see them. Now, some people will send emails to their boss even as a BCC. Beware that your manager is not going to thank you for how you say, inundating them, overwhelming them with emails. Neither will anybody else. I mean, only send it if they need it. But ticket updates is a thing that definitely comes with emails and customer surveys, as it says there. As it says here, there's a downside to email. Email can be seen as impersonal. You will need to use emails with your customers when you're opening and closing tickets. Wrong day. That'll be for next day. The problem with email is if I talk to you and I say something really short with a no expression in my voice, sometimes you might take that as I don't like you, or I don't want to be communicating with you. It can seem to be a bit rude. And so, you know what I mean? A very brief sort of cutoff thing. And that's how your email is going to be, right? Your email, it's very hard to be polite in an email. You can try, and you should try. Excuse me, guys. But emails are impersonal. They can seem to be impolite. I would suggest, actually, if you have an issue, which is a hard issue, you know what I mean, where you have to communicate something which the other person's not going to want to hear, that email is probably not the way to go. That I would say, you know, get on the phone, or even better, go and see them, because then they can see your face and they can sort of get some humanity out of it. You know what I mean? You can communicate some empathy, which is hard to get across in an email. As it says there, there's some other issues about email. Some service desk systems, your IT service management system, some are going to generate automatic emails, and you know that may be okay, but obviously that should have to be carefully designed for the reasons that I just mentioned. And I think that we do need to go back and sort of suggest that, yeah, we definitely need to look at that thing of let's not send emails where they don't need to be. Here, now when it says pardon there, I didn't write these slides up, but you know, I believe the word is burden. Burden. You know what a burden is, right? Extra thing that you're carrying. So yeah, we don't want to burden people with extra emails that they don't want. All right, so as it says there, you may be getting lots of emails, and how do you manage the emails? This is what this slide is about. Okay, so how do we do that efficiently? We need to answer all the emails. So one suggestion here is that we'll go to the oldest email first, but we'll keep an eye on all the incoming emails for anything that's urgent. And so anything that we see that's urgent and easily fixed, we'll sort of get to that first. So here's some more best practice on emails. Let's have a look at those. Manage the customer expectations. Whenever we say that, if we're managing expectations, what we're doing is we're bringing them the reality, right? There's always the ideal, which is what they want. They want to have this thing, it's going to be fixed immediately. But the reality is that we can't do that within the next 3 hours. So that needs to be communicated to them. That's what we mean by managing expectations. That, yeah, and maybe even we say that, you know, generally we'll get to people within 2 hours, but, you know, today we can't. Acknowledging the person, whatever you know about them, what ever interaction you've had with them before, you can sort of leverage on that or use that as a way of communicating with them, of making that sort of connection, which is going to make the communication better. You know, just a polite sort of reminder of some positive thing. But, you know, using their name in a respectful way, etc. Here's an example of mistakes that could be easily avoided. So the customer sends to you some email with a subject name, which is just kind of a very informal subject name. That's fine. They were going out for pizza, and then halfway through the going out for pizza, they realized that there was a problem that they needed to contact you, and they sent that email to you. What you're going to do is when you reply to them, you're going to formalize the subject so that we're not going to perpetuate this sort of very informal and distracting sort of subject line. So when we reply, we're going to get rid of all those informalities and make it a bit more formal, a bit more professional. Personalizing your closing, you know, well, I don't know what to say about that. You know, can I help you more? You know, this pleasure to, you know, you get the idea. I didn't say it very well. I'm sorry. Dear customer. So I mean, I think the idea here is that they're just sort of, there's a bit of empathy that's coming out in the closing, right? So you know, whatever it is that you've had in that interaction, you can reflect back on it in a positive way. Now, avoiding the ping pong, I think the key word here is anticipate. So when you go to reply to the customer, you might know that, you know, I don't want to be sort of mean or tight with the bits of information that I'm giving back to them. I'm going to be generous, right? So I'm going to say, well, yeah, okay, that person asked me for this, but, you know, they're probably later going to ask me for this and this and this, right? You know that they need A, B, C, and D, but they only ask for A. So you're going to say, okay, well, here's A, but, you know, here's the other, you know, you may also need this, this, and this. So what you've done is you've anticipated their need. And then because of that, you'll probably avoid the problem of having to go back and forth with emails, which is frustrating for everybody, especially if it's a situation where the person's in and out of the office and, you know, they only see their email every once in a couple of hours or something. That's going to be quite frustrating for them. If you get a request from the customer, and it might be an email that you're going to reply to, or it might be a service request that you're replying to, or an incident that you're replying to, that what's happened is the customer has mentioned multiple issues that in their mind might be related, but you realize from a technical point of view, each of those issues is its own technical issue. Well, in that case, you should break that email up into 3 responses if there's 3 different issues. And so that way, as this, I guess you would say an email trail progresses from there, then the email can be funneled to the right people. And you're also avoiding all that spamming thing, right? Where there's lots of people on the same email and they're not really interested because we're now talking about a particular topic which doesn't affect them. So we want to narrow that focus down. It's still about getting the email to the right people. And so that means we might have to break up the issues. So the idea in this slide is just that you can have tools that will help you to frame your email. You can use templates. Templates can be available for the email. And basically all you have to do is fill in the name and fill in the issue, and the email is mostly written for you. And you can make your own template, right? So that it's a bit more personal and a bit more friendly, I suppose. The other thing that you've got is you have auto correction, so that not just Grammarly, I mean, you know, not just the spelling, but to check on the way that you've written things as well. So those are available to you. The next couple of slides is about, imagine the situation where customer came in, has an incident, and you create a ticket, and then something else happens, and then you send an email to one of the other people in the service team. And in the email that you sent to the person in the service team, you say some not very nice things about the customer. you know, that customer is not very smart, you know, they're, I don't know, whatever not nice thing you might think that you would say. That's fine. You know, you send it to your service, the service rep, and you have a bit of a chuckle about that. But then because that's got information in there about the service request, the service rep ends up forwarding that back to the customer. You see how that would be a bad thing? Yeah, so we just kind of keep it professional, right? We don't sort of say any negative or derogatory things about our customer in the emails. Now, this is the example also about the spam. If you please look at the red underlining here. I don't know, I think that's probably not really that plausible. So look, we're sending this thing to all of these people. No, so just getting back to the original point on that, just keep your emails only going to the people who are directly affected by it. Actually, I have to say, I've seen this. I've been working for a long time, and almost all the time I've been working, I've had email. And occasionally you'll get somebody will send you an email and they want you to do something, and they copy your boss and they copy their boss and they copy God knows who. You know, whenever I get that, I have to say, I really don't like that. I mean, I don't know what you think, but I try to avoid doing that. But basically that's like a form of sort of pressure. You know, it's kind of like beating you over the head. Yeah, I think probably other people don't like it either. I mean, you know, okay, it might get to a point where you have to copy your boss and copy their boss, but I think only after you've done everything to solve it amongst yourselves privately, you know. So, and it also goes back to the spam. You think your boss wants to see every little tip that you're having with somebody else in the organization? You know, I think they're going to think you're unprofessional. You know, you can't do your job. You have to pull in their Worcester every time, you know, you have an issue, you know. I don't know. I'm just saying that I would just, you know, copying the boss, unless the boss asks me to, I'm not going to. You know what I mean? If they might say, okay, on this particular thing, I need to oversee it. Okay. Otherwise, no, I'm just going to handle it myself. You know, if it gets to a big blowout, yeah, I'll keep them informed. But otherwise, you know, I don't think it's very polite. It doesn't lead to a good relationship with that person you're trying to get the issue solved with either. And I don't think your boss likes it either. Anyways, I talk too much about that. So you do want to have some kind of a standardized, probably standardized, but if not standardized, at least a professional signature. Now, all of the email packages that you've ever used, I imagine, Gmail does this, Outlook does this. You have an option there to set up a signature, and you can set up a signature that includes an image. So that image will usually be your corporate logo. Now, in the case of the college here, for example, they ask us to do that, but they actually ask us to approve. They want to see it and approve it before we use it, or else we get one pushed out to us, which will be a sort of a pro forma signature, and we just put our name in it, and it's got the logo set up. That's important because the organization has a particular sort of image that it's trying to keep, and it doesn't want sort of weird, stretched or wrong colored logos showing up on emails that people that represent the organization. So yeah, it's kind of like a business card, right? You know, your signature. And so it should be professional. Okay, so we're cruising right along. The idea here about using social media. Now this is where I've seen the social media in some of the service desk software that you have. So this will be service desk software running on in the cloud, so that you're accessing it through a internet connection. In some of those in the cloud service desk, they'll have options where you can contact your customers using Twitter, WhatsApp, Facebook, Messenger. Anyways, think about that, how that would be useful to you. I suppose it is. The thing about social media, when you start using that, then you know, are you going to keep it public? Are you going to keep it private? I mean, are you going to make groups, you know, WhatsApp groups with your customers? You know, maybe these are good things. I mean, you'll have to sort of think about how you do that. Now, the other thing that if you start using social media in that way to contact your customers, as I said, are you contacting them one-on-one, or are you contacting groups of your customers? Then maybe you can find some tools that will allow you to gather some statistics on that. You know, what's been happening on these groups that you've been creating. Certainly with Facebook groups, and I'm pretty sure with WhatsApp groups and Twitter groups, you can just get a report. You can get a report from Twitter, you know, how many, responses have you had, how many people have seen this, this kind of thing. And, so that might be useful to you. And so here's some examples. I guess this is what I'm talking about. Social media management software facilitates your ability to sort of do this, so you can get your messages out. Most organizations do a little bit of that, right? I mean, so like the university here certainly has a Facebook presence, and I'm pretty sure it has a Twitter presence. I don't know, I'm not sure about the Twitter. Yeah, but that can be something useful. Okay, knowledge management. We're running to the end. How about that? I thought this was going to take me like an hour and a half, but it doesn't look like. The idea of the knowledge management, we're going to talk about a knowledge base as the key part of the knowledge management. You could have self-service. So you know about self-service, right? So you have a link which is shared with your customers where they can go to that link and they can find all kinds of useful information. We would call them frequently asked questions, but it's a little bit more than that. So the knowledge base is certainly a little bit more than frequently asked questions. It's also going to include something which is integrated. We've got data from all of the things that we've been doing in our organization that's been aggregated. So for example, we have information on how to solve many different problems, and we'll have some kind of a search tool that goes with it. Yeah, it's just a nice kind of thing to have. So what I said at the start of this lecture, there are notes attached with these slides. I'm not going to go through all of the notes, but definitely in the next 4 or 5 slides that we're going here, there's a lot of notes sort of situated. Can I see? Yeah, so not there. No, I guess it's, yeah, so 5 or 6 slides down, we got all of these notes, and you should read those notes. You'll find them useful, I think. So the knowledge base, it should save you some time, because you can direct your customers to the knowledge base and they can find answers to their problems without having to talk to you. Actually, you see that when you ring up on the phone in the automatic call distributions, right? First thing they'll do is they'll try and send you to a thing which, dial 1 for this, and then there'll be some instructions. So I guess you could say that's a form of that. That's a form of a knowledge base. Now the thing here about the cost, if you have a sort of a full suite system for managing your service desk, it's probably going to have a component in it already which will run your knowledge base for you. So in other words, if you've implemented something like this Hewlett-Packard one that we've got here, it's probably going to have that component in there, so you don't have to buy it separately. So in terms of cost, that may be the only cost is going to be the sort of configuring it and setting it up and working with it. You don't have to sort of go and buy it separately. But as it says here, so when it says buy-in, it's not talking about you buying the package. It's talking about the problem with the use of this is to get the people in your organization to actually contribute to it. And I don't mean by money, I mean by contributing knowledge into the knowledge base. So doing the writing that's referred to in this course. Right. Key performance indicators. So whenever we use those terms, KPI, you know that what we're talking about is KPI is what managers use to see if the area that they're managing is meeting their expectations. So what they'll do is they'll set some goals, and then they're going to have some way of measuring those goals, and then they'll call this a key performance indicator. And so some of the things that you could measure. Of course, you could have tools that would do these kind of things without too much trouble. Page visits. Okay, so we've got our pages in our knowledge base. how many times have they been visited? Each individual page or the knowledge base in itself, how many times? The contact rate versus the knowledge base visits. So when it's talking about the contact rate there, it means compare the number of times people are calling you or emailing you to have a specific problem compared to how many times they're going to the knowledge base and doing the self-service and finding the answer for themselves. And so, I mean, hopefully we would find that they're going to the knowledge base more. And maybe when you first introduce the knowledge base, you would measure this, how many times they're contacting you directly. And then over time, you're hoping that the contacts reduce, but the knowledge base visits increase. So that would mean that you're implementing the knowledge base in a way that's useful to the customers. The knowledge base that I'm talking about there is particularly to do with the self-service. The self-service being that they go to the knowledge base, click on a link. There's their, they got a little search tool there. They put in their question, and up comes a document which solves their question. And they're like, yeah, that's great. I don't need to call anybody. That's what we're trying for, I guess you could say. And there's some notes on that. Some other things. So all of these things, when it says KPI, that means we're measuring something. The manager's probably going to do a report at the end of the month and say, look, according to, these, I met my KPIs because of these statistic and this statistic and this statistic. So the top visited articles, that's going to give you a lot of good information, right? It's like, okay, so we can go through there. We've got, 100 articles in there. And this particular article was visited by 50 people over the month. Well, that means that there was something in that article that people would find useful. Maybe that's an article that we would want to sort of revise and make it even more useful. You know what I'm saying? I mean, what I'm saying is it's a high value article. And so therefore we should add some more value to it perhaps. Conversations resolved on the first contact. So that's kind of like the, as opposed to them visiting us. They call us and they say, okay, I need this. And you say, oh, I got that information in the knowledge base. Boom. I'm going to send you this document, which is an excerpt from the knowledge base. And then that would be a measure of how useful the knowledge base is, because the knowledge base, remember, has lots of different articles in it. A lot of them are going to be how to do this, how to do that. Customer calls you up. I need this. I have this problem. Instead of spending a lot of time sort of forming an email and doing a lot of talking, you say to them, yes, I have an exact response for you in this article. It's out of the knowledge base. Now, the extra benefit of that is that the customer is going to know that that answer came from the knowledge base. And maybe next time they'll look in the knowledge base instead of calling you. Not to say that, we don't want them to call you, but calling you costs more money, takes more time. It's more of an effort for you and them. If they can solve it in the self-service, that's better. Failed searches. Okay, so there's a metric, which is kind of a negative metric. What we'd be measuring there is we want to find out how many times did the customer go and use the search tool in the knowledge base, and the question, there was no match, right? There was no answer to that question in the knowledge base. That indicates probably that we have to do some development in the knowledge base, because there's questions that could perhaps be answered that we're not answering. And again, there's a lot more details on that. I'm not going to go through that with you. That's available to you. You can look at that yourselves. Usage of knowledge base and support replies. So again, that's kind of like I mentioned, right? We have an answer for them, but we remember that that's actually in the knowledge base. And so we make sure that they get that. So we can ask the customers to review the articles that are in the knowledge base, maybe ones that we've sent to them, but maybe if they just are clicking in a self-service, we can ask them at the end of looking at that article to sort of make a little review. Was this article helpful? What was missing? This type of thing. And so that's a way of, that's just a quality sort of a process, which will help you to improve your knowledge base. Last couple of slides. How you doing? It's okay? Yeah, all right. So the last couple of slides is, what do we do as people in the service desk managing this service software what do we do to make sure that that knowledge base is always up to date, is always in its best shape? And so we got two things that we look at. We look at what do we do before we put an article into the knowledge base, and then what do we do after the article's in the knowledge base. So here we are. We're going to, before we put an article into the knowledge base, we're going to publish a draft. When I say publish a draft, amongst the people in the technical support. And we get feedback, basically. There's some things that we can do to make sure that the language is okay. Maybe in a case like, I think this would probably apply here in Qatar. Maybe you want to publish that article in 2 languages or more, in which case then that language should be checked to make sure it makes sense in both languages. So you need some language expert to do that. As it says, the subject matter expert should go over the technical details. Maybe you're the subject matter expert if you're writing this article, that's fine, but somebody should review it. Then it should have some kind of approval process. So as it says there, you're gonna set some dates on there. So you publish the article, you'll have some time later where you'll come back and you'll review the article. I see if it's still up to date because things change. And maybe the article will expire. Then you publish it. So that's what we do before we publish it. After we published it, we're going to review it. So in the previous slide, it mentioned that we put a review date on it. We publish an article in, when I say publish, we're not publishing in a magazine or on Facebook or something like that. We're publishing it in the knowledge base database, which is going to be part of our service desk software, RTSM. So we're publishing it there. We've got a search tool so our customers can find answers to questions in there. These are the articles that I'm referring to. We publish the article and we put on the article a review date. Review date comes, I don't know, maybe the review date is 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. Review date comes, somebody, maybe the person who wrote the article, will go and look at the article and see if it's still current and valid. All right, so maybe things have changed. You know, quite possibly things have changed and therefore you need to do some updates. That's why we put the review date in there in the first place, just in case things change. So if things have changed, we make changes to the article and then we change the review date to another date further down. And if things didn't change, we just update the date. Easy peasy. What do you think of that? So I thought we were finished. Oh yeah, we got a couple of slides on improving your writing skills. I can sort of summarize this in about 5 words is what you can obviously go and get more training on how to write. Probably some of you, everybody here, not just some of you, you've all been in a classroom and learned how to write in Arabic and English probably. And so it's not something that's unfamiliar to you, but you wouldn't be surprised that there would be classrooms that you could go to which would teach you how to write technically, right? And maybe you've done that. I don't know, not just writing, just standard, but writing technically. So it's good to sort of go to those, get your skills. You don't have to always go to a classroom. There's a lot of training that's available online as well. I do recommend that you do this. Now, notice up in the corner, it says lab. That's referring to lab 8, which I gave you yesterday, right? So go and look on D2L. You'll find lab 8 there and some instructions on what to do. And there's some links to sort of help with that. This link here, that's kind of nice. So I'm not going to follow it through, but go and look at that link and you'll find a lot of resource in how to do a technical writing, because that's a lab that you're going to work on now, I guess. All right. Any questions? That was easy, wasn't that?